What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Blogger Bowl Week 10 college football recap. I'm Dan Weiner. I'm rocking Marshall today. I just haven't.
It's game day. It's game day, Dan.
It's game day.
It's game day. Game day for my Bobcats.
We have a 6-pack of midweek action. 3 games tonight. Matt's Ohio Bobcats on the road in Buffalo, New York.
This one tests the system. This one tests the system. It does. It's 7 points. It's 7 points in a MAC game. Dan, I don't care how good one team and how bad the other is. What I've learned from the system is you still don't really stray from it unless it's Ohio. I have to go with Ohio, especially after Buffalo really screwed me last week with Toledo. I had a chance if Buffalo goes in. They had 1st and goal from the 7. If they go in and score a touchdown in that series, I go 4-0. And I think for the week it's 7-0-1. But Buffalo screws me.
I want to shout out. We're going to get to the games in a second. I want to shout out a guy who I'm often critical of, but he was a legend this weekend. That's going to be the Nard dog himself, Pat Narduzzi, 21.5-point dogs at home against Florida State. Florida State has the ball. They're up 17 with a minute to go in the game. They have the ball inside the pit 10. They run the ball potentially to try to score a touchdown, and Pittsburgh comes up with the stop, and then Florida State just lets the clock run out, hangs on for the 17.5 win, but a cover for your boy. Not a great week for. I think I went 1-1-1 with my official bets. I don't remember if there was a 4th one.
Yeah, I don't even remember my official bets.
I pushed.
I threw so many out this week.
I trusted Lane Kiffin, that clown. That was a push, and then my Jaden Daniels passing touchdown in each half took a bad beat in many ways with the injury he suffered. And we'll start there. Alabama 42, LSU 28. I went to bed Saturday night expecting to rip Brian Kelly for wasting an all-time great season by Jaden Daniels. And I don't fault anyone who does really, but man, I want to talk about Nick Saban. Every time Alabama rebounds from the slightest bit of adversity, the same annoying people come out of the woodwork with the demise of the Alabama program was greatly exaggerated thing. This feels different. This team is clearly limited. The defense is good. They're not Alabama heyday good, but it's a good defense. The offense really is not. This is the most limited offense Alabama has since before Jalen Hurts. They don't run the ball very effectively, or at least the way we're accustomed to with Alabama. The offensive line cannot pass protect, and Jalen Milroe struggles to throw intermediate routes. But credit to Tommy Rees. They figured out what he does well, and they lean on it. This team is finding ways to win, and that's a credit to what Nick Saban has built over the past 15 years. In my mind, this is the best coaching job he's done since his early days at Alabama. He's so great and won so much, it's easy to take him for granted, and I hope people don't do that. Can they win a national title? Maybe. I think it's pretty clear that this is a down year in terms of great teams. We'll get our first real glimpse into how much there is there with Michigan this weekend. Georgia doesn't quite have the same edge they had the last couple of years. Ohio State doesn't have the quarterback they've had the past few years. It feels like things might be more open than they've been in the playoff in a long time, and perhaps Nick Saban can will this team to another title. Matt, your thoughts on what went down in T-Town on Saturday night?
The problem with that is, and I'll get to that because I was very impressed. The problem with that is, if they're going to win that national title, they're going to have to win 3 games in a row against 3 playoff teams, and maybe possibly Georgia twice, which I think would be really difficult because they're going to have to. They have their loss, and their loss is. I know it's going to end up being to a top 10 team at the very worst, most likely. It's not going to be a good enough loss, in my opinion, to really be the first 2-loss team to get themselves into a playoff, especially with how undominant they've looked at times this year. So they're going to have to beat Georgia, and they're going to, sneak in and probably be a 3 seed. They'll have to beat a 2 seed, whoever that might be. It might be a tough matchup, whether that's Ohio State, whose defensive line I think could give Alabama's offensive line a lot of trouble, or Michigan, or whoever. That's going to be trouble, and then they'll have to obviously win a national championship. So 3 straight games against national championship contenders might be tough, but it is Nick Saban and Bama. But yeah, Dan, the difference, I'm with you. The demise of Bama was greatly exaggerated, people. This is definitely different because in years past, people wanted to jump on that when that team still had elite NFL talent all over it. And I'm not saying this team doesn't have NFL talent. Clearly they do. I think that defense is still very good. But offensively, they don't have, the DJ Flukers of the world on their offensive line that are, dominant. And they don't have 5-star NFL starters. They don't have Jahmyr Gibbs. They don't have Trent Richards. They don't have that dude at running back. Nothing against Chase McClellan. He's a fine player, but he's not those dudes. They don't have Devontae Smith. They don't have Julio Jones at wide receiver. They don't have Tua at quarterback. They don't have even Mac Jones, like how good he was last year. What they've done is coach their players up, and like you said, they've coached to their personnel and what they do well. And I think I've said that between this show and the Bleacher Nation Bears show no less than 50,000 times this year. The sign of a great coach is coaching to your players and maximizing their strengths as opposed to doing what you want to do and shoehorning players into your system. Nick Saban has actually had to coach this year. Not that he hasn't had to coach in the past, but he's had to be a lot more hands-on. They've had to get a lot more creative. They've had to do a lot more adjusting. And offensively, even in years past when they haven't maybe had the best offensive unit, they've done one thing really well. In years they haven't been able to pass the ball very much or had Greg McElroy, they had a dominant run game. And maybe years they weren't able to run the ball well as much, they had 3 NFL wide receiver, day 1, day 2 draft picks at wide receiver and Tua. So they've taken an offense that's incredibly limited pretty much across the board. It's Jerome Burton, right? The receiver. He's a really solid player. I'm not sure he's a first round draft pick. Jermaine Burton. He's not. I don't think he's a first round draft pick, but he's had a very nice year. But that's their best guy. That's their best weapon as a receiver. Jalen Milroe is limited as quarterback, but they just keep figuring out ways to maximize. And honestly, I'll go. I don't know if this is going one further. Not only is this Nick Saban's best coaching job in recent memory, maybe even you could argue ever at Alabama, depending on where they go this year. I'm going to say he's probably having the most fun coaching this team, and he's probably enjoyed coaching this team the most because it actually is more of a challenge for him, and it's forcing him to coach. Mm-hmm. He's not just CEO recruiter who's kind of making sure the train stays on the track. Like, he's getting in the nitty gritty. He's coaching this year because this team needs to be coached, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just been an effort from everyone involved. Like the crowd, I talked about it. There were some procedural issues that LSU had on offense in that game. The crowd's into it. Everyone just there seems more invested, not taking what Nick Saban has done for granted this year and really building upon it. And I'll say this: I don't want to talk about Brian Kelly. I don't care about Brian Kelly, but I'll say this: like, if they wanted,
I'll say one thing about him.
Go ahead, because
No, it's fine.
I was just gonna say this: like, if you want to award the Heisman Trophy to the best player in college football, I don't care that they've got 3 losses. You can certainly make the argument that it's Jaden Daniels. And their 3 losses, 410 total yards, a touchdown and a pick against FSU, 513 total yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers against Ole Miss, and then 382 total yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and of course the injury on the hit that took him out of that game against Alabama. They certainly have not lost a game because of Jaden Daniels. He has played at a very, very high level. They don't run the ball very well as a team. Otherwise, Malik Neighbors is awesome. The rest of their receiving core is just okay. And they know that every week he's got to be as good as anybody in the country because that defense is just so absolutely wretched and remains absolutely wretched. So I know he's not going to win it at this point. It's over at this point where the field is narrowing down. But if you really wanted to give it to the guy who's been the best player in college football this year, I think you can definitely make the argument that it's Jaden Daniels. And I come off super impressed with what he did again in a tough environment on Saturday.
Yeah. Now there's still season left to play, and I know is he playing this week? Do we know that? Or
I'm not sure. I'll double check while you're
whatever. Things can still happen in the last quarter of the season. Jesus, we're in the last quarter of the season. That made me really sad. If I was a Heisman voter voting today, my number 1 would be Marvin Harrison Jr. My number 2 would be Jaden Daniels. I'd be hard pressed to not vote Jaden Daniels number 1, but I've been so staunch on the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in the country, and I think he means as much to that Ohio State team as Jaden Daniels does. Probably the tiebreaker is that Ohio State's undefeated right now, but that would be my 1-2. And I don't like Michael Penix Jr. is probably still around there at 3, but I think those two have kind of separated themselves.
If we get to Washington 12-0 versus Oregon 11-1 in the Pac-12 title game, I think that game is for the Heisman Trophy. Probably depending on, and I'll talk more about this.
Depends on Carson Beck finishes the year.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they go out and,
but he played pretty well against Missouri, and he just was kind of an afterthought. And that depends on
because conference championship game week matters though too. And if they play a Bama team and he goes out and lights them up, and maybe. I agree with you that Penix, if it's 12-0 Washington versus 11-1 Oregon, that game, if it's not for the Heisman Trophy, it's going to go a long way in deciding it. But I still think Carson Beck has a chance.
I mean, sure. I think he's got a chance. I think JJ McCarthy has a chance. I think, and then we'll get into that in
We'll
greater
find out this
detail.
week.
On
They
yeah,
finally
exactly.
play a game. They play a
We'll find
team.
out on Thursday a lot about Michigan. So there's a couple of guys. My instinct still says that. Speaking of Georgia. Oh no, you wanted to say something about Brian Kelly. What did you want to say about Brian Kelly?
Oh no, more just so
Don't call
Phil,
him.
like LOL Phil.
Oh,
Shout out Phil for backing
yeah.
Brian
I mean,
Kelly on
look,
the road against Nick Saban.
they had a chance in that game. Like if Jaden Daniels doesn't
They
get hurt, I know
did,
they were down, but like,
but they
who's
did,
that?
but they didn't win.
They did not win. All
Man,
right.
make
Speaking
fun of Phil
Georgia,
with me. He's not here to defend himself. Make fun of him.
yeah, that's true. Good job, Phil. We told you, knucklehead.
Idiot.
Georgia 30, Missouri 21. I'm not sure how many programs are more of a Charlie Brown than Missouri. There are some, but they're up there for sure. They always think they're going to kick the ball, but Lucy is always waiting there just to pull it away. So Charlie Brown falls on his ass. Whether it's the 5th down against Colorado, the flea kicker against Nebraska, or 2007 when they beat Kansas, but lost the Big 12 title game and Kansas ended up going to the Orange Bowl ahead of them. Glory is always just snatched away from the Tigers. So let me set the stage. They're down 27-21 with 9 minutes to go. Brady Cook drops back to throw a screen and deposits the ball in the arms of Nazir Stackhouse. The problem, and it really wasn't his arms, it was more in the gut of Nazir Stackhouse. The problem, Stackhouse is a 322-pound defensive lineman for Georgia. His near touchdown return was wiped out for a penalty, but they ended up kicking a field goal to go up and ice the game. Georgia's defense just does not look very Georgia right now. Aside from the picks, Cook was solid with his arm, but Georgia could not stop the run against a team we talked about the other day that has not been very consistent running the ball. Cody Schrager torched them for 112 yards. Missouri had a 90th percentile EPA per rush in this game. They just kind of pushed Georgia around. Jamin Dumas Johnson broke his arm. He's the leader, the signal caller for the Georgia defense. He's going to be out going forward. And Ole Miss comes to Athens this week, a team that's going to run the ball. Like the Georgia offense continues to be the Georgia offense. We talked about it. The only thing they don't really do is they don't really get big chunk explosive plays down the field a lot, but they are just going to churn and churn and churn and churn. And we'll talk about the Ole Miss game coming up. That's what they did in this game. That's what they're going to do to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to come in with the idea that we're going to want to run the ball. So we're going to just, once again, we're going to see Georgia get tested. But we thought, okay, where's the motive? The motivation should be there at home against Missouri. And they just didn't particularly play well on defense in that game. Now, granted, they gave up 21 points. It's not the end of the world. I mean, they're Georgia, like that's, but we've come to expect so much from them. And for Georgia to be soft against the run, and Kirby Smart talked a lot about it after the game and in his press conference this week. So obviously it's going to be a point of emphasis, and we'll see what they do against Ole Miss. My feelings about Lane Kiffin are well established. We'll talk about it, like I said, later this week. Georgia doesn't really feel like Georgia, and it's like they're gonna probably win out, and they're probably gonna get there, but it's just like the edge, I guess, trying to win 3 in a row. There's a reason why teams don't win 3 titles in a row.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's the edge or lack of motivation. I just think in terms of talent wise, this is probably of the 3. And I'm going to say probably this is the least talented of the 3. And that's not to say this team isn't very talented. That's to say the last 2 teams that won national championships were incredibly talented. I think this is just more of a team that's a little bit closer to normal. Not that they're normal. They are most certainly a top 4 team, probably a top 2 or 3 team in the country. I have no idea if they're the best team in the country right now. I would still probably put them there. But also just credit to Missouri in this one. They played their asses off. They played a really good football game. They're well coached, and they didn't back down to big bad Georgia. And does Georgia have some things to clean up? Yep, absolutely. But like, similar to things like what we say about stuff with Alabama, like I'm going to trust those guys to get things back on the track. And in the regular season at times last year, we were saying some of the same things about Georgia, maybe not to the extent of their problem stopping the run and all that, but like kind of waiting for them to turn back into Georgia. And eventually they did. I'm going to reserve judgment until I'll happily be wrong with Georgia. I will go down with the ship with Georgia and be happily do that, because I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. Kirby Smart has obviously earned the benefit of the doubt, winning 2 national championships in a row. But credit to Missouri. I think that's just a really good football team. Like they played a good football team. They played a good game, and Georgia ended up winning the game, obviously. But this week, like you said, I'm very curious to see how they come out and play Ole Miss, because Ole Miss, I know, struggled to run the ball early on in the year, but Quinshon Judkins is looking like Quinshon Judkins again. He's really good. Ole Miss is able to run the football. Like, this is this is a big chance for a statement game for Georgia to be like, yeah, we're fine. Don't worry about us. Or will Ole Miss keep things closer? I don't really know yet. We'll see. We'll talk about obviously more on Thursday. But yeah, this is an intriguing matchup. And for the week schedule we were talking about with Georgia, obviously early on it wasn't very difficult, but it's shaping up to be at least a pretty strong close to it.
Yeah, I mean,
They're going to earn their way to the playoff if they get there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they play Ole Miss, they play Tennessee. I mean, they're going to beat Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech's at least friskier than people thought they were going to be.
And then they'll have Alabama.
And probably Alabama at this point. In the Pac-12, Washington 52, USC 42. I told you guys I bet 71.5 for the over. When it opened, it jumped to like 76.5. And when USC goes on like a 6-minute drive to start the game, I'm like, don't tell me that I'm going to get screwed by the fact there's going to be some long drives here. Well, that was not the case at all. I'll say this, USC's offense played their asses off. There were understandable concerns with how engaged Caleb Williams might be now that the national title hopes were gone. He gave his all. This game was always going to come down to which offense made one critical mistake, and the fumble right before halftime was the one thing that was the first break of serve really in this game that turned the momentum in favor of Washington as they were able to pull away. I can say you can do that. I wrote it's a broken record with Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch because I wrote this Sunday morning. If you were living under a rock, Alex Grinch was finally summarily dismissed this weekend. And as someone, I think it was Spencer Hall wrote this weekend, it's got to be a pretty good feeling on his opposing team to beat someone so badly you cause a coach to get fired. That's got to be a pretty good feeling for Washington. But I think you can do the Spider-Man pointing meme with Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley, who have wasted historic quarterbacks because they have bad defensive coordinators. Things have gone really bad at Baylor. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention. They just lost to Houston in overtime. They only have 3 wins. I think we're probably seeing the end of the Dave Aranda thing. So I think he'll be back at LSU. It'll be interesting to see, though, what USC does at defensive coordinator because they've just kind of bottled it pretty badly. And now Caleb Williams is going to be gone after this year. Now they go to Oregon, although I'm going to say this, thinking about betting USC just because I think it's
14.5, right?
14.5.
That's a lot of points.
Yeah, there's a lot of points. So what did you see? What did you think about what happened there on Saturday at the Coliseum?
I believe I said on the show I would take it up to like 90, the over. And, well, that would have hit. Better from Washington. I still think there's something somewhat off about them since the Oregon game. I'm not totally sure what it is. I can't totally put my finger on it. But the offense, at least looked to be back on track. And, I mean, if there's a get-right game for an offense like that, it's against USC at the Coliseum. Good on them for going out there taking care of business. They have things to clean up defensively, but also USC's offense is very good. Caleb Williams is very good. And they did some good things. It was a get-right spot, and they needed it. They did get right a little bit. They still obviously have to finish out the season. Who do they play this week?
Washington plays Utah at home.
Okay, so, I mean, another test-ish, but, like, they should go out and win that game and take care of business.
Yeah,
like, for them, it's all about – for them, it's all – I mean, I guess they do have a one-game buffer here because they pretty much now can lose one game and still be in there and play –
So,
Oregon, correct? I mean, because now they have a tiebreaker with Oregon, and that's
to play for the Pac-12 title game. Yeah, they have a 1-game buffer, I think.
So yeah, like it's all about getting right for that game, and I think they're getting back on the right track to doing that. Defensively, they got to clean some things up. I still think they're a more talented unit than they played the other week. Not the other week on Saturday night. But intrigued to see how they come out against Utah and see if that offense can keep getting better, because obviously it's going to be a tougher, more stiff defensive test with Utah. Obviously, they don't quite have the dudes this year, but obviously they're going to be incredibly well coached.
Yeah, they do have Washington 6-0, Oregon 5-1, USC 5-2, and then Arizona, Oregon State, and Utah are all 4-2. So yeah, they've got a 1-game buffer to get to the Pac-12 title game. And I'll say this, like we dog a lot on Lincoln Riley and what he's done. I mean, he's one of the best offensive coaches in the country. Caleb Williams is incredible quarterback. They're a very tough offense to play. And at this point in the season, once you get to November, man, and you're in playoff contention, and we'll talk about one of those teams in a little bit who's in playoff contention, sometimes you just got to win. Doesn't matter. Like
that's especially when you're undefeated. Yeah. When you have one loss, like we'll get to with Texas. Like if you have one loss and you're like an outside looking in team or a fringe team, how you win matters. If you're undefeated and you're in a Power 5 conference, win. Just win. If you finish,
I think if you have one loss, I just win.
No, but you know what I mean. Like in this year, especially with how many good one-loss teams and undefeated teams there are, it's toss-up. Like how you win is going to start mattering some style points. But in general. When you're Washington, if you're undefeated, you have that win over Oregon, just keep winning. Doesn't really matter how you get there. Just keep winning.
Just keep winning. Just win, baby. Before we get to Texas, we'll talk about the other big game, and then we'll talk about the big game in the Big 12. Bedlam lived up to its billing. Oklahoma State 27, Oklahoma 24. All you ever hear about is how heated this rivalry is, but this was a chivalrous game. Both teams repeatedly tried to gift the game to the opponent. The team that went turnover on downs, interception on 4 straight drives won this game, Matt. This game was big, dumb chaos from beginning to end. Ollie Gordon was good. Alan Bowman will probably be an Oklahoma State legend forever for playing his best game so far as a Cowboy in this spot. It just came down to which team made more mistakes. Oklahoma just melted down more. The game-winning touchdown drive featured a pass interference and then an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on Brent Venables, which you cannot do in the fourth quarter in that situation. That's a 30 yards worth of penalties on one play for Oklahoma. Set up a drive, and Matt, we've been waiting for the Big 12 to rig a game against Texas or Oklahoma, and we finally got it. Drake Stoops got absolutely mugged in the end zone, didn't draw a flag. Oklahoma ends up settling for a field goal and lost by 3. Oklahoma State controls their destiny. They only have newcomers to the league, and I'm trying to remember which one they don't play, but they play 3 of the newcomers. So it looks like Oklahoma State's going to be headed to the Big 12 title game. You can still get them at about plus 420 to win the Big 12, which I thought was interesting. I tried to do some of the, so in my head, I was wondering, is the scenario just simply if Texas were to lose? I'm not being negative, Dan. I'm just, I was just wondering.
This is hypothetical, Dan, not negative, Dan. We'll get to negative, Dan.
If maybe we will, maybe we won't. Is it just as simple as Texas loses, Oklahoma goes to the Big 12 title game? And it is most certainly not that. I tried to figure out what it would take for Oklahoma to get to the Big 12 title game. And it's not saying that it can't happen. It's just one of those things where there's 18 iterations of what can happen because so many teams are bunched up. Because I'm just thinking it's kind of funny how just the 20th win all time for Oklahoma State in this rivalry. And they were playing, we will never, ever get back together after the game, on the field and all that, which hell yeah, do that. But it would just be kind of funny, objectively, if all this energy and emotion went into the last bedlam ever and they ended up playing in the Big 12 title game.
That would be kind of funny.
What do you think of this?
It was just good for Oklahoma State, man. Good for them. That was not only a Super Bowl this year, that was their program Super Bowl. They've been beaten up by Oklahoma for over 100 years now. And to come out in the last one ever, you got that forever now until they play again, maybe in 10 years or whatever it is when they finally bury the hatchet and have a non-conference game against each other. You won the rivalry. I don't care if you lost 90-19 or 90-20, whatever the hell it is. You got this. You have the ultimate trump card on. I'm that's awesome. Good for you guys. Ollie Gordon's really good. That's something we haven't established, and talk about a guy who's not going to win the Heisman, but probably should start getting some Heisman votes ish, whatever you want to talk about, or at least discussion. Not that he should win it, but he's been just awesome really since they decided to start giving him carries in what was it, week 3 or 4. Oklahoma's I don't know, they're starting to feel a lot like last year, where it's a program with a lot more questions than answers headed into the SEC. And when you look at the 2 teams leaving the Big 12 heading into the SEC, Texas is clearly positioned the better, the team with I don't want to say the better program right now, but the team with the better chance to hop in the SEC and immediately succeed and play pretty well. Oklahoma's got questions.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just I haven't been the Texas win was they played great. They played a perfect football game. Texas didn't play all that well, and they won on a last minute drive. Good on them. But they haven't played all that well this year. They lost to an okay Kansas team with their backup quarterback. They lost to an Oklahoma State team who's on who's on a transfer quarterback who was a 3rd stringer last year, and they played UCF, who's a 1-5 team in the conference. They needed to stop them on a bad 2-point conversion trick play to hold on to win that game. Oklahoma's wins this year haven't really been all that impressive outside of the Texas win, and that was one that they got up for in a rivalry game. I'm not sure their program is in this great place, or they necessarily have the right guy to lead them into the SEC.
I think simply it's a matter of Steve Sarkisian just had a 1-year head start. I think that's all it is.
It's possible.
I think because what happened was last year.
But I think the fact that he had that 1-year head start and got to do this in the Big 12 as opposed to having to do it in the SEC next year is.
Absolutely. But Lincoln Riley didn't leave Oklahoma with a lot of SEC caliber players on the lines.
That's fair.
And that's where Brent Venables is trying to build it. And they had a good recruiting class this year. They have another good one that they've lined up already coming in for next year that they're working on. Like he's building it the way he wants to. Last year was kind of a year zero in a certain way. Like Oklahoma doesn't get a year zero, but that was as year zero-ish as it can get. Just because you have to kind of completely retool how you do things. So it's going to be tough sledding for them, but if they can continue to recruit, that'll be great. They're going to need proof of concept wins more than just beating Texas on a last, because the story of that was they almost blew that game. Like they outplayed Texas for 2.5 quarters and they almost blew that game. They did not, and that'll be a win forever. But like, to your point, like since then, what have they done? They looked bad against Central Florida. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Oklahoma State in the last Bedlam game. But here's one that can kind of, what could potentially like give that program a shot in the arm.
What's that?
Did you see the thing? I think McMurphy put it out. There's a potential bowl game that looks very realistic now based on how the season has played out.
No, what would that be?
Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma versus USC.
Oh my God, let it happen.
Like if that happens,
let that happen. I would. Oh my God.
If that happens, that could be a huge kind of fundraising, kind of galvanizing thing for, even though it's the Alamo Bowl, it's a bowl game, whatever. I don't put much stock in bowl games. Like for that program to play Lincoln Riley, although at that point Lincoln Riley might also be gone. You might just be like, Bears head coach, Raiders head coach, Lincoln Riley.
No. I don't want him anywhere near.
Nevertheless, the last game we'll talk about, Texas 33, Kansas State 30 in overtime. Okay, Matt, had a few days to digest what happened, rewatch some things, listen to some people who are more objective about Texas football than I am, and came away much more level-headed than I was on Saturday when it ended.
Good.
Texas was the better team. Texas whipped Kansas State up front on both lines of scrimmage for 3 quarters of this game. This should have been an easy win. Texas, though, has a habit of making things a lot harder on themselves than it needs to be. The simple fact of the matter here is that if Quinn Ewers is healthy and plays this game, Texas wins this game by 3 scores. Because what ends up happening is this game ends up being a game because Texas just made some mistakes and turnovers. Texas, we talked about it last week. I wondered if Texas played it close to the chest with Malik Murphy against BYU and didn't let him air it out a ton by design. That feels accurate. He hit some big shots and Kansas State couldn't cover them. I hate being blame the refs guy, and I've seen plenty of bad officiating in the Big 12, but I've never seen them just let DBs get away with pass interference because they couldn't cover deep, and that's what started happening. Malik Murphy threw an interception because his receiver got taken down by a DB. They didn't call it. They ended up, I think, either kicking a field goal or having to punt because there was a very, very, very clear pass interference that didn't get called. Nevertheless, Kansas State, they're well coached. They made some adjustments. They took the deep ball away. And Malik Murphy showed some of the rawness and weaknesses that he showed last week. I don't think it's a definitive statement about the player he's going to be a year from now or 3 years from now, but it's pretty clear he's not quite ready to play quarterback for a team with national titles aspirations. The deep ball's gorgeous, but when he can't just step into a ball and let it fly, his mechanics come and go, and the decision making isn't great. Kansas State dropped 2 interceptions, got the one that I talked about where they mugged a receiver, and then there was one where just everything Malik Murphy did was wrong. Footwork was wrong. Mechanics were wrong. Decision-making was wrong. Just let a ball go. And you can't make those kinds of decisions when you kind of get into these coin flippy ass Big 12 games. But that's what it is. I mean, he made some mistakes. They should have lost this game. They didn't. They survived. I'm never going to be like, I hate being the guy to criticize a coach who's aggressive. I'm always on team aggressiveness. But excuse me, the way that fourth quarter had played out, Texas's only touchdown drive in the second half was a drive that started on the 5-yard line when Will Howard fumbled. So in that situation, I like Chris Kleiman being aggressive and going for it, but it wasn't the right, not even the benefit.
Yeah,
you're playing better. And momentum doesn't exist. I get that, but
no, it does.
Felt the longer that game went, the more likely it would have been that Kansas State was going to win.
Yeah, that's where I'm with you. And hey, I'm still not going to fault him for going for it because he was on the road in a hostile environment, wanted to try to end the game there, and he went for it. Fine. I don't think it was the right decision because, like you said, this wasn't UCF on the road at Oklahoma where it's David versus Goliath. You were, especially without Quinn Ewers in, we're not going to say you were an evenly matched football team, but you were on the same playing field, as Texas. You were not super overmatched by any means. This wasn't we can't play with these guys. We can't go punch for punch with these guys. We need to win now. You could have probably gone punch for punch with them in overtime. And quite honestly, there was a lot more pressure on Texas and Malik Murphy as a backup quarterback.
Sure.
So I'm with you there. But I mean, on the Texas side of things, like Malik Murphy is honestly kind of reminds me. He's very Jalen Milroe-y. Like he has these
Except
cool
it doesn't.
plays,
He
these
can't
good plays.
run.
Fair enough. I meant in terms of throwing standpoint.
Sure.
He's got the big arm. He can throw the deep ball. But yeah, some of the intermediate throws and decisions, you're like, what is it you say you saw there? But hey, like Texas survived. They played really well, obviously, in the first half, 2.5, 3/4.
3/4, yeah. I mean, and that was, and like, real quick, like that was kind of the thing when I went back and rewatched it. Is like they melted down in the fourth quarter. Like they kicked Kansas State's ass for 3/4 of the game.
And they did that, like you said, without their starting quarterback. That's like it should not have gotten to as close as it did. That's fine, but they came away with a win with their backup quarterback against a Kansas State team that was playing as good a football as they've played all year, and came in when a lot of people were picking them to. Just about everyone was picking them to cover, which they did, but a lot of people liked them to win. Phil was all over him Friday to win. Like Texas won a good football game against a tough team and a team that kind of had their number too. So that's
not true.
No, they have Oklahoma's number. They have
Oklahoma's number, not Texas.
Yep.
So one other thing is like
I caught myself.
If you're of a certain age, like I am, you remember Ron Prince and late stage Bill Snyder era Kansas State team just beating Texas every time they played them. I think it was like 5 or 6 in a row. But I think this was 7 straight wins for Texas. Like they put the purple boogeyman, which had been a big, big problem for them. They put that to bed finally because everything went against them late and they found a way to win this game, which was super impressive. Too? Yes.
Fantastic uniform game.
Oh, yeah.
Love those uniforms together. Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. That's a fantastic
Kansas State's uniforms do not get enough credit for how awesome they are.
And they're like
logo.
Texas.
Love the silver. I love it.
They're like Texas in that they don't do a lot of gussying up. Like
no, they don't need to.
They pretty much have the thing. I will say though, if you saw the graphic that my Saturday morning graphics, I used the vintage alt Kansas State logo. If they wanted to throw that bad boy on a helmet every now and then, I'd be okay with it. But they don't really
for a vintage alternate logo.
Yeah, they don't really freestyle a ton there. It's pretty much it's just
Bill Snyder way.
It is a good look for sure there. All right, we can go ahead and we'll get to the lines. And I'll just say this. So Texas is a 9.5 point favorite on the road at TCU 53.5. I only just lumped that together now to say Quinn Ewers is listed. They're saying he's day to day. He's been throwing. He's going to throw again this week. If I had to guess, I think Murphy starts again on Saturday and Quinn Ewers is break glass in case of emergency kind of situation. I think they want to give him another week to get right. So that way he's healthier for that game on the road at Iowa State next weekend, which is also a very, very big game because I kind of started to wonder, like at a certain point, I think Texas might need a running package with Arch Manning because of some of the limitations that Malik Murphy has. But now that it seems like Ewers is probably healthy enough to play if they really need him to, I don't think that's going to be a thing. Nevertheless, we turn the page, week 11. Matt, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. We'll talk about it now. We have a 6-pack of Maction on the weeknight. We have 3 games tonight, 3 games tomorrow. Ball State at Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, 9.5 point favorite. The total 43.5. We have one of the battles of. This is not a battle of directional Michigan. You idiot! I'm calling myself an idiot because Central is not a direction. Central Michigan,
though.
Huh?
Regional Michigan.
Yeah. But it's Central Michigan at Western Michigan. Western's a 3-point favorite, total 56.5. And then Matt's Ohio Bob Kitties on the road in Buffalo. Ohio's a 7-point favorite, total 43.5. Then tomorrow night, we have Akron at Miami of Ohio. Miami's a 17. We have a huge spreads in Maction tomorrow.
Take Akron. I know they stink, but take Akron. You can't. 17.5 is too many points.
Yeah. 41.5 is the total there. Bowling Green is an 8.5 point road favorite at Kent State. 40.5 is the spread or the total. And then Eastern Michigan at Toledo 18.5. You just want to take stinky MAC teams. Tomorrow is your day to do it.
I won't lie. I'm a little bit nervous about the system this week.
A
little bit nervous, but we're in such good enough shape after the start. I mean, we're 5-2-1 to start the year. We can afford, not the greatest of weeks. We can't have an offer type week, but the system's off to a good start. We can afford an okay week.
System's the system, baby.
The
only non-Saturday game otherwise that I'm super interested in, Wyoming's at UNLV. UNLV is a 4.5 point favorite. That's just like a good sickos. I think this is a Mountain West After Dark Friday night game. So shout out to that one. That's 51.5 total. Then we go to Saturday, big noon Saturday. Welcome to the college football season. Michigan Wolverines, who are a 5.5-point favorite. What do you?
I hate that this game is at noon.
Yeah.
I give the thumbs up again. Look.
That's weird.
I don't know what.
I don't know why. Do you have a? Are you using an?
I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
Man. Your webcam's really excited. Michigan's actually playing a team that matters. I'm just gonna put this out here. I want, if you are out there, rush. So this opened at 7. If you ran out to go bet James Franklin in this game, please send me a note. I want to know what you're thinking, why you're thinking.
James Franklin has the chance to do something I never thought James Franklin would have the chance to do. And that is completely go from somebody that everybody hates and is kind of annoyed by to one of the most beloved figures in college football in the country. He has a chance to completely change the entire narrative on him as a head coach. If he goes out and wins this game, now I'm not saying he will, but if he goes out, in fact, I would probably take Michigan in the 5.5 because I don't think Penn State's offense is good.
Yeah, I definitely would take Michigan in the 5.5.
But if he goes out and wins this football game, no one talks about his record. No one mentions that he's 2 and whatever against top 10 teams, or that he's only got one top 10 win at home. That's all gone. That is all gone, and he has won over goodwill for I don't know how many years, but a couple. Because not only does it do that, but it puts them all that has to happen for them then to get to the Big Ten championship game is win out and have Michigan beat Ohio State. 2 very possible things that can happen. So if he wins this week, he has a chance to do not only one of the funniest things in college football, but he will save his reputation at Penn State.
There's for sure. And we'll do it.
Which means he'll probably get killed because James Franklin has more pressure on him.
Exactly. We'll do a deeper dive on that game whenever we do. We got to talk to Phil and figure out what our schedule is later this week. Alabama's on the road at Kentucky. They are a 10-point favorite on the road in Lexington, total 48.5. The shit show that has become the Colorado Buffaloes rolls on. Arizona at Colorado. Arizona. If I had told you going into this game, maybe before the season, you might have actually believed Arizona would be a 10.5-point favorite on the road in this game. You'd probably think things went really, really tragically bad for Deion Sanders at Colorado. It's been rough.
They are going bad.
They are going bad.
He fired his offensive coordinator mid-season and threw his entire offensive line under the bus.
Didn't fire him. He demoted him.
He fired his offensive coordinator mid-season.
We're not going to demean him. That's not what we're doing. That's what Deion said after the game on Saturday.
Hey, Sean Lewis. Lewis, there's probably going to be a pretty prominent offensive coordinator opening in a couple weeks. It's back home towards the Midwest. You can kind of come back, have a pretty good job, pretty prestigious role, should set you up pretty good for a head coaching job. Why don't you come on down and take it when that opens up?
Mute you for talking about and making this about Notre Dame.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I just said there's probably a pretty prominent opening in the Midwest.
Sure. A fun game in Conference USA is New Mexico State on the road at Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky 4.5-point favorite, total 57.5. That is for a spot pretty much in the Conference USA title game. New Mexico State clinches with a win. Western Kentucky would then have to beat one win Sam Houston to get in. So it did pretty much a play-in game for that conference championship game. Oklahoma State has to go on the road to Central Florida and what I would assume would be one of the all-time biggest letdown spots. But it's a 2.5-point. They're 2.5-point favorites. 64.5 is the total. I was hoping it would be more so that I could kind of jump on the Central.
Yeah, if it was 3.5 or 4, yeah, 2.5 is not. I think I like the under though.
It could be kind of ugly. Yeah,
I think it's going to be a gross game where the offense doesn't Oklahoma State's offense is kind of sleepy. Yeah. I think that's a lot of points for those two teams
at the bounce house. Utah on the road at Washington. Washington a 9.5-point favorite, total 54.5. And Dan's a gigantic idiot. Miami at Florida State. Florida State's a 14.5-point favorite, total 50.5. I'm going to think on it for a little bit more. I am strongly considering betting the Miami Hurricanes 14.5-point underdogs on the road there.
Gross.
Yeah.
And anytime betting Miami or Mario Cristobal is gross for me.
Yeah. Rutgers at Iowa. The total is 28.5. I just want to make sure.
Under.
Okay. Tennessee and
Put it on my card. Did you watch the Northwestern game?
Oh, Matt.
I was at a bar with my girlfriend's an Iowa grad, and obviously there's a lot of people in Chicago that are Iowa grads. So we're out at a bar with some of her friends. We didn't go to the game, but in Wrigleyville by Wrigley where the game was. It was a lot of fun. We were watching the game, having a good time. And one of the guys one of their friends who I had just met for the first time was there. And we were talking about what we had on the game. He was like, "Oh, I pounded the under." Like I got it opened at 29.5. I got it to 31, pounded the under. It was 0-0 at halftime. The live total was 15.5. And had we been not in Illinois, I would have bet it. Luckily, I was out of state when I put the first bet in. Had we not been in Illinois, I would have bet the under 15.5. Good thing I didn't, because they got 17. But that was the easiest under 31 I've ever taken. And now we're going to take the under 28.5 for Iowa Rutgers, because that's what we do.
A fun Big 12 game, Tennessee at Missouri total. Missouri's a 1.5 point favorite at home. Total's 58.5. A good little Sun Belt game. Texas State at Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina 1.5 point favorite.
That is fun.
Total 60.5. Coastal Carolina's been playing pretty. Like Grayson McCall got hurt, and I was like, well, their season's over. They've been playing pretty decent. I mean, they needed to come back against Old Dominion the other day, but I think they've won 3 or 4 in a row. Ole Miss at Georgia. We'll do a deep dive on this game. 10.5. Georgia's a 10.5 point favorite. 58.5 total. A game that is almost always very weird. Florida at LSU. LSU a 13.5 point favorite.
That's going to be fun.
2.5. Jaden Daniels day to day. Brian Kelly's not saying much about
it. Does college have a concussion protocol? No, I don't.
There's
but
not
it's not like the NFL where it's like he has entered the concussion protocol.
Well, I mean, Jaden Daniels got knocked on the head, came out of the game.
I know, but I'm saying it's not something like they're.
There's nothing official. None of the stuff is official. They're going to be clandestine about it, and to their credit, and in fairness, they should be. Like, there's no reason to give anything.
Oh no, yeah, I totally get. I was just specifically asking. Like, I didn't know. I don't remember if there were specific rules like the NFL or the NHL has.
Not that I know of off the top of my head. And then I talked about Texas TCU, Texas 9.5, 53.5 total, and then USC at Oregon. Oregon at 14.5 point favorite, total 73.5. The market, I don't know where this is going to go, because I might bet USC, and maybe I should have just saved this for them. But the market seems to be overrating Oregon a little bit right now. I don't think this should be 14.5. This should be probably closer to I would say closer to 10.5 than 14.5. And then I posted it on the BetSperts Twitter today. There are hypothetical lines for the Pac-12 title game, because technically it's not a set in stone matchup yet. FanDuel's got Oregon a 6.5 point favorite on a neutral against Washington, when Washington was a 3.5 point favorite at home. And when they first played, I don't think that a 10 point flip from at Washington.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
See, it seems like a lot. So I think the market's kind of overrated, and they're playing great football. Like, don't get me wrong, they are playing awesome.
They are.
But that feels like a bit of an overreaction to me in the market, but I don't know. So that's what we have. What else? Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Just that Michigan Penn State being at noon is a crime.
It is.
That game belongs at 7 o'clock at night on my TV.
It was Iowa.
It might have been Iowa.
Which
when else are you supposed to do it? Because every time you have an actual big game, Fox makes you play it at noon. It's terrible.
I think if Penn State wins this game and Michigan beats Ohio State, I think we're going to get a Penn State Iowa rematch in the Big Ten title game. I think, because I think if you get that round robin where Michigan, Iowa,
if they all beat each other, Penn State does have the tiebreaker. I have seen that now, like in multiple spots.
Oh, okay, good.
But
because I think it comes
I'm
down
95% sure Penn State has the tiebreaker if they all beat each other.
It comes down to combined record of non-divisional opponents, and because they played Iowa, who has the best record in that division right now, and they didn't play Purdue, who has the worst record, I think
Michigan played absolutely nobody. Yeah,
well, there's that too. So nevertheless,
sorry, did I say that again?
We will be back on Thursday or Friday. We got to talk to Phil, and we'll break down that game: Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida State, Miami. We'll figure other games to talk about. I don't know. I'm just so excited to get to see Michigan football play, do something on the field. I'm this Connor Stalions sign stealing thing has gone from cheeky and hilarious to just I'm over it. I'm tired of the whole story.
Just do it. Whatever's going to happen. Just
get on with it.
This whole every day it's something new. And I feel early it was entertaining stuff, but now it's well, the Big Ten might suspend Jim Harbaugh. It's okay, well, if you're going to do it, then just do it. Or oh, well, Ryan Day might have hired this guy. It's okay, well, you still cheated. It's just whatever. Just get on with it. This has been going on way too long for there to not be some sort of, if not full-time resolution, some sort of temporary resolution to get us to the end of the year.
Although the story did make a bit of a comeback today, because apparently in 2022, Connor Stalions got sued by his homeowners association in Ann Arbor. So Hey, we're finally back. We're back to the story being stupid and not insufferable anymore. Nevertheless, we will actually get to talk about Michigan football on Thursday or Friday, which is awesome because they're
It's
undefeated.
wild. We haven't done that all year.
Yeah, no, they seem really good. We're gonna find out, and I can't wait to find out. Like I said, we'll be back some point this week. Don't know when, but for
Thursday
Matt,
or Friday, one of the
Thursday or Friday. We don't know what time, but we'll figure it out. Until then, though, we appreciate you checking us out. For Matt, I'm Dan. We will talk to you guys later.